Welcome to faction creation in Age of Wonders 4. There's a lot of choices in here, so we're probably going to split this over a number of different videos. So I will sort of go through the basic concepts first and then go through into the more detailed nitty-gritty. So the title will tell you how far we get through this. For example, it may just be how to generate a hero, or it may be that we actually go through a full faction. I don't know how long this is going to take, and I don't want it to go too long. Anyway, welcome to the series, guys. My name is DasTactic. Welcome to the channel as well. Before I get started, again, a special thank you to my supporters, whether they be Patreon supporters or whether you're members here on YouTube, whatever it might be. Merchandise, my game store, all the links are in the description there. So let's get into faction creation. And of course, when you set up a game, let's just go through the typical way that you would end up getting to faction creation. And we'll just do this one fairly quickly. So we'll just go into new game. This is the typical way. You would then choose your actual realm. Now, I'm just going to be going into create realm, which is just so we get in the habit of doing it. I'm not going to change this at all. So I'm just going to be using the continents, and that's all. I am just going to change this one across to 4 players, and I'm going to be playing on normal difficulty for this particular run. So that's actually how I'm going to be setting up my run at this game. We'll just go next. That then is our world or our portal creation. We then come into the different factions. And so from here, you either choose from the library that is provided for you with the game. Some of these will be unlocked either through DLCs, as you can sort of see through here, or it could be unlocked through the Pantheon, all sorts of different ways. It can also be unlocked through the story missions that you do if you are sort of playing through the campaign. And so if you are an old player of Age of Wonders, for example, you're going to see some names that will actually, you'll remember, like Hambinger, the wholesome halflings, from I think it was from Age of Wonders 3. Who else have we got in through here? Sindrin Toliath is, I think, from Age of Wonders 2, I believe. Fangir from one of the early games as well. Werlak. These are all old. Artica, one of the sort of favourites, like this is a Frostling sort of unit. Actually, I should be clicking on these so you can sort of see them as we go through what they actually look like. It's just a beautiful looking game, absolutely beautiful. You've got Carissa Red with her orcs. It's just awesome. What an awesome game. Anyway, you can choose and play as one of these characters, one of the old beloved, Necron, with his cruel Deathbringers. It ends up sort of being like an undead faction. It doesn't start off that way, but it does end up that way, or can end up that way. So you've got a whole lot you can just choose from in here. Now, what we're going to be doing for our particular run is I'm thinking of just playing with Alfred Elderstone, who is very, very vanilla. And I'm thinking that's probably a good way to sort of learn the game, is to use him, but we'll come back to that. You can also go, if you start to create factions, whenever you create a faction, it will then be automatically saved into your custom area. And so you'll then end up with the different sorts of factions that you end up creating. So you can see there I've got a lot that I've actually built over time. Now there's one other thing you can do if you do come into this custom area, and that's to click on Random Ruler. Now I'm loving the idea of doing this. So I'm going to be doing this a lot for my playthroughs, but not for this particular one. We'll just go through. But if I do go and click on it, now remember I've got the Dragon Dawn DLC, so there's a 1 in 3 chance I'm going to end up with a dragon. So if you just go to Random Ruler, there it is right now. So we've got ourselves a dragon that's been created called Pyre, and this is all just randomly generated. The faction underneath there is randomly generated. I can just keep on randomizing these. Here we go. We've got ourselves a some sort of hero unit. Back in through that side, looks like we're in charge of elves, so this will be an actual hero. And another dragon. Now this one is Tigran, so again possibly a hero. Dragon again. This one is different, I believe. What we've got through here is actually a wizard. Now, the wizards are different, and I will talk about this when we actually go through this one, but you get the idea. We can sort of generate things fairly randomly from in here, which is actually really, really cool. Anyway, let's not do that. Let's just go and not pick those. By the way, when we just hover over different things, you'll see the transformations as they go from the basic form into the basic sort of form with in fact, I'll just wait until it goes through the whole thing, and then we'll go through and I'll try to explain what's going on here. Basic form in this case is humans, and it will sort of change. Then they come in with their basic weaponry. Then they come in with their minor alterations. You can see there's some sort of stone and rock applied, and then they come with their major alterations. This is they become Whiteborn or undead at that point. So that's the different progressions that you see through the game. So they're just explaining what's going on with this particular journey in through here. Now, if you do choose one of these, whether it be from the library or whatever else it might be, you end up not just with the hero unit, but also with the faction sitting underneath there as well. But let's go and create a new faction. So you can see there, create new race and ruler. Now you do have to split this up into a few different things. So let's just go and create a faction. So the first thing we need to do is to choose our physical form. What I might do, I'm just trying to think whether I split this up or just do it all in one big go. There's a problem that there's a perceived problem. There's not a problem with the game, but there's a perceived problem that the form is meaningless. And yes, it can be if you decide to play it that way. Meaning, if you go in and grab a halfling, and of course, if you've been watching my channel, you know how much I absolutely love halflings. And so if I choose halfling, and that's a joke, by the way, if you are new to the channel, I hate having halflings in games. I don't mind it so much in Age of Wonders 4, but I absolutely hated them in Age of Wonders 3, like with an absolute passionate hatred. But they've actually sort of nerfed them backwards a little bit. They're nowhere near as powerful as what they actually were back then. But what people are scared of is that you end up with halflings, which are going to be very, very, it should be weak units. And from there, you then go and change what's called their body traits and mind traits. And instead of having like quick reflexes and being elusive, and what this then means, and this sort of works for the halflings, so these are small, so they're harder to hit. The 30% harder to hit by ranged attacks is the quick reflexes. That's the benefit that they have by being halflings. That's thematic. Elusive, so gains +6 defense and resistance against retaliation attacks and opportunity attacks. And so this allows them to be more hit and run type tactics. If they go away from another unit, if they try to move away, there's going to be more defense for them to be able to move away for those retaliation attacks. And so it just means that they've got a little bit more survivability in that one aspect. One thing you'll notice here, there is no luck. So luck does not play a role in the halflings in this form, which is fantastic. Anyway, I probably shouldn't have chosen the halflings, but this gives you the illustration. What people are concerned about is that the game will randomly generate a faction of halflings where they change the body trait to strong, so into here, and then something like, for example, it might be here where they've got, what might be a good one actually as a good explanation. If we go with, ferocious as an example. Let's just go and do that one there. So in this case, what you've then got is you've got a body trait of strong, and the strong is going to give them increased physical damage. So melee and physical damage attacks deal plus 10% damage, which is unthematic for a halfling. With the mind trait is ferocious, for example, deals plus 40% damage via retaliation attacks and opportunity attacks. Again, not thematic at all for a halfling. And so what happens with the game, though, is the game actually has like a small group that is thematic that it will then choose when it randomly generates a faction. In fact, if we just go back out, let's just do it until we end up getting a randomly generated halfling faction. So if we just go across, just go into this custom realm in here, select next. All right, so let's just go through and actually just go across to create faction. Oh, hang on, back, custom factions, random ruler, and I'll just see if I can generate something to see if it's thematic. These are orcs. Orcs are strong and ferocious. They're the two things. Tick. That actually works. That's in theme. Do another one through here. Another orc, strong and ferocious. So it doesn't change these. Toadkin are resilient, meaning that they actually have better resistance against sort of magical attacks, and they've got water adaptation. That's thematic. That works. Humans have got fast recuperation and are adaptable. Again, that's thematic. That one works. They get better experience. These are lizard folk, poisonous and cold-blooded. These don't change much at all when the actual AI is generating these particular units. This one is Toadkin again, resilient water adaptation. I'll just see if I can generate a feline. You've got resolute and desert adaptation. These are good in the desert. You've got Molekin, which have got bulwark, which is sort of like almost like a dwarvish type sort of thing. Underground adaptation. Again, it's thematic, the way it sort of does then work. Let's find goblinoids, so fast recuperation and sneaky. again, it's thematic for everything. So what people have been concerned about, here's the halflings. So the halflings don't change. It's quick reflexes, meaning they're harder to hit with ranged attacks, and elusive. So the fear that people have that randomly generated content will be unthematic and you're going to end up with sort of like super powered halflings just doesn't happen. So it just doesn't happen in the game. It is very, very good the way it actually does sort of do this. So when you play the game, it does, if you're coming against halflings, they feel like you're playing against halflings. If you're coming against orcs, it feels like you're playing against orcs. So I thought I'd just mention that because that has been a concern of people. I probably shouldn't spend too much time rabbiting on about that stuff. Anyway, let's just go through the creation process fairly quickly. So the first thing you need to do is choose your physical form. Now, as I say, you as a player can decide to play as halflings, then change these into the orc style. So if we go across to orcs, strong and ferocious, which is exactly what we chose there before, we could do that on the halflings. And yes, if you did do that, then you are going to end up with halfling forms, but with orc style. So we don't need to do that one. But by all means, one thing I like to do, for example, I really do like playing as the dwarves. The dwarves have got tough and defensive tactics. So these give them +2 defense, and they've got defensive tactics in through here. There is actually another one in through here, which is bulwark, which defense mode grants +2 defense and resistance. So it means only in defense. So you can play very much defensively. So you can sort of swap these sorts of things out, like Hearty +10 hit points, for example. So there's a whole lot of these different traits you can put in. Now, I won't go through them all, but just hover over them if you're trying to sort of construct your own faction. But the body traits and the mind traits are important. These will actually then give you a bit of a feel for how to then play as your faction. Now, if you decide to make strong, ferocious halflings, then that's on you. But don't worry if you are concerned that the game could randomly generate orc halflings. It's just not going to happen. So don't worry about that. Maybe there's mods that do it, but anyway, it's not something I'm interested in either. So I empathise with you, but let's just go and we'll cancel that and just keep the tough and defensive tactics in here for the dwarves, for example. So if we just go and create like a dwarven faction, so we go and select that one. Now, the next thing we have to choose is the culture. This is very, very, very important for a number of different reasons. And the main reason is the mix of troops that you end up having. Now, it's very important, and you'll only really get a feel for this when you start to play the game. It's very important to actually understand what tier 1 troops you're going to get, what tier 2 troops you're going to get, etc., etc. Now, if you're trying to figure this out, press F1. F1 will then bring up the help file or the encyclopedia, and from here you can then sort of go across and start to search for if I go to feudal, FEU, feudal lord. Oh, hang on, no, that's different again. Hang on, I'll just look for it. Yeah, I'm going to be using this a lot because there's so much good stuff in here. If you come across the 4th tab, this is cultural units, okay? And then what you can then go and do is actually filter by the different types of cultures. Like, so feudal was the top one that we sort of saw. And so you then got, and if you just go and click on tier, it's then going to sort them out by their tiers. So tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And so for feudal, you end up with a pikeman unit, you end up with a scout unit, and you end up with an arch unit. Now, you're always going to end up with a scout unit in any of the actual cultural units that you end up getting. But in this case, we've got a pike who is more of a sort of good at attacking large creatures, is sort of what they sort of tend to do, and an archer in the tier 1. It's important to get a feel for the tier 1 units. By the way, we can go across and choose the dwarf sort of style, so we can see what they actually do look like on that other main map. So we can actually do that into here and have a bit of a look at them. There's our pikeman unit. So again, it's a little bit different than what's actually showing in the game, but not that much different. Actually, maybe it's still the same. I thought it was only a single pike that was in there. But this is the feudal side of things. So feudal gives you this sort of start. It's important to know what the tier 1s are because these cost you the least amount of money, so they become the backbone of your early army. Very, very important to know that one. In this case, what we want as the dwarves is probably more to have more defender sort of styles. Now, the defender style will have a shield and a sword or some sort of melee weapon in the other hand. These guys are defensive, and for the dwarves, these actually are good. So you may decide in your own mind that actually, no, I really want to have a defender unit as my tier 1. So let's just go across. That was feudal. If you go to barbarian and then click on tier again, we can see we've got a sundry unit. Now, these essentially are javelineers. These are skirmisher type units. We've got a warrior, so we do actually have our shield unit there as well. So it's remembering the dwarves and through this side. So we do actually have a defensive unit there if we needed them, but we don't have an actual dedicated range unit. So that may be not what we're looking for. So again, depending on your style of play, just do it this way. But pick the tier 1 units, because you are going to be using these a lot in the early part of the game. So that's just a bit of a tip. Mystic in through here as well. These are going to be, as you would guess, sort of more mystical. And these, again, it's almost sorted by tiers. If we have a look, we've got the Mystic Projection, which is essentially just the Scout unit, which is like a floating projection. Back in through here, we've got a Mage unit, which is tier 1 as well. So not really suitable for the dwarves, but would be suitable, not typically for a dwarf, but could be for some of the other factions. And we've got the Arcane Guard. So no defenses until we get to tier 2, which then gives us a different sort of shield unit. So that's the shield unit in through there, the spell shields. Then we go across to dark. These are sort of like your more evil sort of style. And if we just go across, click on tier 1. So we do actually have an archer unit in through this side. We have an outrider, which is just going to be the scout unit for them. And we've got the dark warrior. Now, the dark warrior is a shock unit. This is what this thing here means. This is not a defensive unit at all. So that's not really going to be, again, exactly what we want. This is good for crashing in and causing damage, but also doesn't really protect the units all that well. So for a dwarf faction, not great. For an orc faction, great. So depending on how you want to play the game, you just sort of decide how you go. But this cultural choice is important with the tier 1s. This is a bit of a tip. High will give you, again, if I just click on tiers, we've got the Light Seeker, which again is just going to be a scout unit. We've got a Dusk Hunter, which is a ranged unit again, back in through there. And we do actually have a Dawn Defender. So this one is actually probably a good choice for us to go with something like this, where we've got like a good defensive unit and a good ranged unit. And this is a good combination as playing as a dwarf, for example. If we then go across to the Industrious as well, we can then just click on the different tiers. Again, Pioneer unit on some sort of boar. We've got an Arbalist unit. Now, these have actually got like a different sort of thing. These shoot a crossbow. It's only a single shot. So again, have a bit of a look around at what you're looking at through here. So we've got like a female dwarf unit there. I think it's female. Is got the Arbalist, and we also have the Anvil Guard in through there as well. Again, another defensive unit. So playing as the dwarves, this would actually be fairly cool. So let's just go back out away from the encyclopedia. There's our cultures there. We just went through them all. So when we had a look at them, feudal does not give us, it gives us this one and this one as the 2 units at tier 1. We don't get this one until tier 2. So that's not really, for if we are trying to play as a defensive dwarfen faction, it may not be the best style. Back in through high, we know that was a tier 1 and this was a tier 1. So that's actually suitable for us. And it's also good to sort of know what other things that, you will actually ultimately then get. Barbarian, we didn't actually have a good enough ranged unit. We did actually have a good defensive unit, but that was pretty much it, and the skirmisher at the back. Industrious was probably another good one for the dwarves, where we end up with the shield unit back over here, and then the Arbalist. That's a good combination. Dark, we were going to end up with the archer and then the shock unit, and then mystic, we were going to end up with the Arcanist back over here, like the more the mage, as well as the shield unit over through here. So depending on how you want to play, the cultures have a massive bearing in how things actually then go and work. Now, one of the other aspects about this, which is very, very important, is to have a look at the what's called the affinities. And so when we choose mystic, we get two astral affinity. When we choose dark, we get 2 shadow affinity. And so these also will then have a bearing. As you get used to playing the game, you may decide to go after very specific affinities, but don't worry about it too much when you're just starting to learn to play the game. More just go on what's the mix of forces we're going to get. In our case, I'm thinking that for a basic dwarven faction, Industrious actually works in pretty well for the dwarves, just because of this shield unit, this defensive unit, plus the Arbalist. It's a nice start. We end up with even more shield units back in through here. It's a good choice for a dwarven faction. So we just go and select that one. That gives us 2 Materiums. So we end up with 2 Empire Materium Affinity. Just go and select. Now we have to choose the society traits. Now this is a hard choice. Again, if you're not really sure, just go with what thematically feels good to you. You can sort of go based on the name. Like you can see, for example, we've got like order is one of the affinities. And so we have to choose 2 of these, and each of these will be like one choice of order, one choice of chaos. There's some astral, nature back in through here. Then we go back into the Materium. We've already got some Materium. We may want to go just focus on the Materium. If you're unsure, just go and choose from whichever area you're going from. So it may be that you go with runesmiths as an example. Again, have a bit of a read to see what they actually end up doing. So we can actually go that way and click on that one. We need to click on a second one. We've got great builders. Sounds good for dwarves. Let's just go and crack on that one as well. And now you see our affinity has gone up to 4 in Materium. Now we can split that one up if we wanted to sort of get something a bit different. We could go back to order, for example, and grab Imperialists as an example. If that's what you want, it really depends it's really entirely up to you. So don't worry about whatever it's going to be. I'll just go back to great builders in this case. But don't min-max, or don't bother min-maxing, just have fun with it. But the affinities, just be aware that you are changing the affinities as you do this. We just go to select. Now we have to choose the tome of what we're going to then be choosing. And so in this case, it usually starts you off, if you've got like a lot of affinity in one particular area, it would tend to put the tome where it is. Now the tomes go up through 5 different tier levels, and again, if you're wanting to sort of see the full gamut, just press F1, and that will then bring up, or it should bring up, if I just go to information, just do it that way, there we go. You can just go across the actual tomes in here. And so again, you can then just go and say, okay, well, what sort of tomes are we going to be having a look at? You've got the tomes for, first of all, you've got the tomes for the various group. Now we've gone with Industrious, so we end up with this particular little tome pack initially. So we get that one automatically by choosing Industrious. And then from there, we can then go and start to look at for example, the Materium Affinity. We can then sort on the different tiers. And so this is the progression, the Tome of Rock. And so there's got 2 Tome 1s, 2 Tome 2s back into here as well, 2 Tome 3s. You can hover over to see what they've actually each going to be bringing you. 2 Tomes 4s. Now there is a certain limit with what you can then go and get. When you start to sort of go and grab these later tomes, like particularly once you get to the Tome 4, you've got to have a certain number of Materium to unlock a Tier 4 tome. So you tend to have limited choice by the time you get to Tome 4. But with these as well, these will then add in different Materiums, for example, or if we go to all the tomes, tends to be sort of like anything at all. This one here would give us 2 nature, for example. So things will chop and change depending on what you sort of really are looking at through there. I don't know if the DLC will go through. I'll just have a look at nature. Actually, I won't do nature. If I look at chaos, some of the new DLC, yeah, actually it is bringing in this one in. So it's got Tome of Dragons and Tome of Evolution. These are 2 tomes that sort of start you off towards Draconians, which actually share nature and chaos. If we go to nature, they should be there again as well. Yes, they are. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so that's actually, that's an easy way to just have a quick look at the tomes. You have to make a choice in here. Again, just hover over and just read them. You know, sort of think, okay, is that what I want? Yeah. Or, you know, what's the second one? The second one we end up with gargoyles, stone spirits, rock blasts, stone skin, earthkin, which was like a minor race transformation. So let's just pick that one. That gives us +2 Materium. That's going to take us up to +6. It doesn't matter, by the way. You can have them as spread out as you like. So don't worry about putting them all into one. There's no real good or bad way with that. Just do whatever you feel comfortable with. So don't worry about only doing this. Just choose the way you want to play it. I'd strongly advise that, rather than trying to only have one. It may be that you decide that you want to have something else. Which I won't go into detail here, but as I say, there may be something else that you may be wanting. Let's just go and select that one for here. All right, now we come down to the ruler choice. I'm going to skip over this to a large degree, and we're going to come back into this for the next episode. But what I will do is I'll finish off the look of our particular group. I'm just going to choose champion at this case, and we'll come back and explain all this in the next episode. So here's our particular leader. Now, if I go and click over through here on race, I can then go and change the look of the race itself. So I've got the physique. So I can sort of change them to make them sort of more bulky or more thin. I've got the arm length in through here as well to make them sort of more like longer, thicker arms. The legs as well can be sort of like taller or shorter depending on what we actually want. The skin color as well can sort of chop and change, so we can sort of scroll that one through various sort of skin tones. The army armor color, this will then change the color in through here, so we can go with like more of a bronze sort of look or more of a gold look, whatever we actually decide that we actually want to have. The army hair color will then change the hair style a little bit. It doesn't change it dramatically. There we go. It's sort of got red-headed dwarves in through there. More sort of like a grey, more of a white. You know, just pick and choose what you sort of want in through there. Just go that way, I think, for now. And then the mount type for anything that is actually mounted. In this case, we've got a boar as our default. We can go with a white horse. We can go with a wolf, a warg, a brown horse, and a pony. So depending on what you actually want. So for dwarves, the boar is sort of like the one that it defaults to, but you can choose one of the others if you do decide that that's what you want to actually have for your particular faction. But the AI again won't change it away from boar. It will keep the boar there, but it will randomize the look of your actual characters when they do come into the game itself. So let's leave that there. I mean, that sort of then covers, I guess, the actual races. So we can go through the actual race formation within the faction itself, and also then choosing the tomes. In the next episode, when we come in, we'll then go through and actually I'll go through the different options for your heroes and what they all then actually do mean. So thanks for watching. I will catch you then.